The storm is relentless. Rain slams the valley, mud swallowing every step. Hill 903 looms above Fort Ridge, dark, silent, deadly. Flashes of gunfire tear through the gray, echoing like a heartbeat of fear. Shadows move in the fog. Every snap of a branch could be the last thing anyone sees. Explosions rock the ground, mortars screaming through the air, tearing earth and sandbags apart. The defenders cling to trenches, breath ragged, eyes straining through rain and smoke. The enemy does not rush, they stalk, probe, wait for the perfect moment to strike. One misstep, one glance the wrong way, and the valley becomes a grave. Supplies are scarce, radios crackle in vain. Lightning illuminates the approaching figures, and night falls heavy and cold. Every heartbeat counts. Every decision could mean survival or annihilation. Fort Ridge stands, but for how long? If you want more immersive war stories, subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below. Which risk would you take? Fight out or hold the line? January 1968. Fort Ridge sits isolated in the heart of the valley in Vietnam, surrounded by dense jungle and the looming heights of Hill 903. The rain never stops. Mud clings to boots, and visibility is reduced to a few meters. From this precarious position, the defenders scan the tree line, searching for movement, straining for the faintest sound. Every day here is a battle, not just against the enemy, but against the terrain, the weather, and exhaustion. The Americans hold this outpost for a reason. Fort Ridge commands the surrounding high ground and oversees the enemy's supply path. Losing it would give the attackers a clear route to strike deeper into friendly territory, cutting off supplies and tipping the campaign in their favor. Every bunker reinforced, every patrol sent, every decision made is about survival and strategy. The defenders are aware of the stakes, encircled, under constant bombardment, and depending on sporadic aerial supply drops, they must hold Fort Ridge at all costs. The storm, the hills, and the relentless enemy combine into a crucible where every choice can decide life or death. The rain never stops, mud clings to every boot, and each step through the valley feels like wading through thick, unyielding clay. From Fort Ridge, the defenders watch Hill 903, the high ground looming above them, shrouded in mist. Every movement across that ridge could mean death. Flashes of gunfire streak across the gray horizon, and the ground trembles with the distant impact of mortars. The first patrol returns, soaked and silent. Their eyes tell the story the radios cannot. The enemy is close, probing, testing. Fort Ridge is not just a base. It is a knife's edge where strategy and survival are inseparable. Trenches are reinforced, sandbags piled higher, and every bunker inspected again and again. Every second, the defenders adjust, shifting positions, scanning the jungle, listening for the faintest snap of a branch. From the valley below, the enemy moves like a tide. They do not rush, they encircle. Every approach along the supply path is met with cautious observation. Every sound in the mud or brush is treated as potential threat. The defenders know that one misstep could open a hole in the perimeter that would cost lives. They check mortars, reload rifles, and ready machine guns. Silence is broken only by the intermittent roar of artillery and the crackle of distant gunfire. Helicopters arrive with supplies, slicing through the rain, their skids skimming the mud. The cargo is dropped into the center of the base. But each landing is a gamble. One wrong move, and the enemy could strike from the high ground. Ammunition, food, and medical kits are scarce, and each crate is precious. The defenders move quickly, unloading, reinforcing, and preparing for the next wave. The storm and the enemy seem to be working together. Water drips from helmets, boots slip in trenches, and mud clogs the barrels of rifles. Visibility is almost zero, yet even in the relentless rain, the defenders adapt. They coordinate, shift positions, and hold the perimeter with a grim determination. Every step, every glance, every decision is calculated, because in this valley, mistakes are fatal. Hill 903 remains a looming shadow, the enemy's potential advantage. The valley swallows sounds and movements alike, hiding approaching forces, concealing traps, and amplifying fear. The defenders focus on what they can control: the walls, the trenches, the firepower. Night begins to fall. The first wave of attacks could come at any moment. Fort Ridge feels small, fragile, but the men holding it know that this position is the keystone. Hold it, and the enemy gains nothing, lose it, and the consequences ripple across the entire campaign. Every heartbeat echoes through the mud and rain. The siege has begun, and survival depends on every choice made from this moment forward. The valley is alive with danger, and Fort Ridge is the only thing standing between the enemy and complete control. The rain has not stopped. Days of constant downpour turn the valley into a quagmire. Each step a struggle, each movement slow and exhausting. The mud clings to boots and rifles alike, weighing down every soldier. Visibility is low, and the defenders can barely see beyond the edges of Fort Ridge, but Hill 903 watches them, a dark silhouette, a constant threat looming above. The enemy intensifies their attacks. Mortars fall closer now, shaking the earth beneath the base. Machine gun fire rattles through the trenches. The first attempts to breach the perimeter come from the supply path, probing the defenders' strength. Every approach is met with calculated resistance, every movement carefully observed. The defenders shift positions constantly, reinforcing weak points, preparing for what feels like an endless assault. Communication is strained, radios crackle with static, often cutting out entirely in the storm. Coordination becomes a challenge. Orders are shouted over the roar of rain and artillery. Every decision matters. A single miscalculation, a delay in repositioning a squad, could open a breach that the enemy will exploit without hesitation. Supplies are running dangerously low. Food, ammunition, and medical kits are rationed carefully. Every crate accounted for. Helicopters struggled to land, skids slipping in the mud. The defenders risk each landing under heavy fire, knowing that without these supplies, Fort Ridge cannot hold. Each drop is a lifeline and a gamble. The terrain itself is a relentless adversary. The valley's mud slows movement. Fallen trees and uneven ground force defenders to adapt constantly. Hill 903 provides the enemy with observation points, giving them an advantage. Yet the defenders use the rain and fog to conceal their own maneuvers, shifting quietly, laying traps, and reinforcing weak points. As days pass, the psychological pressure grows. Sleep is minimal, nerves are raw, and exhaustion weighs heavily. Every shadow in the fog could be an approaching patrol, every distant sound a precursor to an attack. The soldiers are tested not only by the enemy, but by the unending storm and the grueling conditions. Night falls again. Artillery shells land in bursts, shaking the earth, tearing through mud and debris. The enemy is relentless, probing for weaknesses, pressing closer, testing resolve. Every decision becomes a gamble, every second a measure of survival. The defenders hold their ground. They cling to trenches, bunkers, and the high walls of Fort Ridge. Every patrol, every volley of fire, every adjusted mortar counts. Hill 903 remains a threat, the valley a trap, and the enemy is patient. But Fort Ridge is not yielding. The siege has tightened, and the pressure mounts, forcing the defenders to their limits, testing their resolve in the storm, mud and fire. Night falls over the valley, but darkness brings no rest. The enemy, exhausted from relentless assaults over the past days, takes shelter in small encampments along the valley floor. Rain has eased slightly, and the mud is less of a hindrance, though every step is still treacherous. The defenders, smaller in number but determined, plan a daring night strike. Under cover of shadows, squads move silently from Fort Ridge toward enemy positions. The patrols are precise, using the storm's residual fog to mask their approach. Every step is calculated. Any noise could reveal them and turn the operation into a disaster. The first defenders reach an enemy encampment. A sudden volley of gunfire and grenades breaks the quiet. Confusion spreads through the ranks of the attackers as the defenders strike quickly, cutting down many soldiers before they can mount a response. The element of surprise is total. Enemy soldiers scramble to regroup, but the defenders, outnumbered, cannot sustain a prolonged fight. After inflicting heavy losses, the squads begin a tactical retreat, moving rapidly back toward Fort Ridge. Each shot fired during the withdrawal is deliberate, designed to slow the enemy's pursuit. The retreat is chaotic but controlled. Defenders sprint through mud and debris, returning to trenches and bunkers. Heartbeats pound as tracer rounds streak past, narrowly missing their targets. Coordination is crucial. One misstep could leave a soldier isolated and exposed. Back at Fort Ridge, the defenders quickly reinforce positions. Mortars are adjusted to cover potential enemy advances. Every vantage point is monitored, every rifle ready. The night remains tense, but the defenders have gained a psychological edge. They know they have reduced enemy strength and disrupted plans. The valley echoes with distant cries and sporadic gunfire, reminders of the strike's impact. Even as exhaustion gnaws at the men, they feel a measure of relief. The enemy has been hurt, but vigilance cannot waver. Any lapse could undo their success. As dawn approaches, the defenders hold their ground. Fort Ridge remains the keystone, and though their numbers are fewer, the courage and precision of the night's counterattack have shifted momentum. The siege continues, but the balance has begun to tilt. The storm has passed, leaving the valley soaked but calm. Fort Ridge stands resilient, its walls battered but unbroken. The defenders, though outnumbered, have turned the night's counterattack into a decisive advantage, inflicting heavy casualties and disrupting enemy formations. Patrols cautiously move along the perimeter, securing high ground and reclaiming positions abandoned by retreating enemy forces. Signs of disarray are everywhere: trampled camps, discarded weapons, and silent trails that once teemed with attackers. Every observation confirms that Fort Ridge now dominates the battlefield. Supplies and reinforcements are organized efficiently. Ammunition, food, and medical kits are distributed strategically to maintain readiness. Every soldier understands that victory is earned through preparation, positioning, and disciplined execution. Small squads launch targeted strikes on remaining enemy units, exploiting confusion and weakness. The attackers, demoralized and disorganized, fail to regroup. Fort Ridge's defenders press their advantage with precision, securing key trenches, bunkers, and observation posts along the valley. Exhaustion is heavy, mud and blood-staining uniforms. Yet morale soars, every bunker reinforced, every path cleared, every mortar adjusted solidifies control. The defenders' courage and coordination have transformed Fort Ridge from a precarious outpost into an unyielding stronghold. By midday, enemy pressure has fully broken. Retreating forces scatter across the valley, incapable of mounting effective resistance. Defenders, though few, have turned strategy, determination, and decisive action into victory. Every decision from the night's counterattack contributed to this outcome. The valley lies quiet at last. Fort Ridge, scarred but intact, stands as a testament to resilience, discipline, and tactical foresight. The defenders have not only survived, they have dominated through initiative, courage, and unyielding resolve. As the sun breaks through clouds, the men of Fort Ridge know survival was earned, not given. Against overwhelming odds, strategy, precision, and relentless determination have turned a desperate defense into a decisive victory. The siege is over, and Fort Ridge endures. Fort Ridge has endured. The rain has eased, the mud remains, but the trenches are still filled with defenders who refuse to yield. Every bunker reinforced, every mortar fired, every decision made under the storm has carried them through. Survival here was not chance, it was strategy, discipline, and the relentless will to hold. The valley, once a looming threat, now lies quiet, but the memory of pressure, fire, and uncertainty lingers in every shadow. Victory is measured differently in the crucible of siege. It is not about territory alone, but about holding the line when the odds are stacked against you. The enemy tested every weakness, yet Fort Ridge remained standing. Every moment of fear, every step through mud and rain, every pulse of adrenaline contributed to survival. The defenders endured, adapting to terrain, weather, and relentless assault, proving that determination and tactical foresight can turn even the direst situation into a stand worth remembering. If you felt the intensity of this siege, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. Which risk would you take? Fight out or hold the line?